us. Cindy is a singer, as many of you know, and she's known for her classical singer column, Ask Erda, I would assume. Is that
I
right?
always say Erica.
Yeah, okay. Which is a fabulous monthly advice column that I have read for years. She's known for business of singing seminars and also provides private consultations where she focuses on how to conduct the business of singing. So welcome, Cindy. Thank you so much for being here. And
Thank you, Kari.
yeah, I also want to mention she has a wonderful book called The Student Singer Starter Kit. And you can find that on her website, thebusinessofsinging.com, under Resources tab. You can also find old columns from the classical singer there. And this book is just a wealth of knowledge about selecting teachers, how to find a great teacher, preparing auditions for school and other auditions that you need, top 10 things I wish I'd learned in school. I love that. Don't we all wish there was a class about this in college, but you know, the curriculums are so full already that it's hard to include that. But thank you, Cindy, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kari. I'm delighted to be here. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Neil Simmer, who rescued me because I ended up in New York instead of Texas as I thought I was going to be and didn't have a place to do this. So he invited me down to his beautiful apartment. He's sitting across the table from me listening in on his computer. So thank you, Neil.
Yes, thank him for all of us. That would have been scary to not have you have a place to do this with us. So you and I talked the other day about kind of artistic entrepreneurs and what responsibility do voice teachers have in leading our singers. So I'd love for you just to launch in a little bit about that subject.
Okay, well, I'm sure that I won't be saying anything that people here don't already know when I say that voice teachers are very frequently, maybe even almost always, the first line of resistance. You're the first resource that most young singers have, and a portal to the information about career, about schools, about what they should be doing next. So no voice teacher is just teaching vocal technique. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. You all know. You are a therapist, you are, and you know, sometimes you're a parent, sometimes you're, I mean, certainly you're teaching vocal technique, but you're also a coach and you're a fashion consultant and you know, all different kinds of things. So I think, and I also teach. I've taught at the college level, and I teach privately, a very wide variety of students. And I think that part of our responsibility as teachers is to be that stepping stone for our students and take them to whatever next level they need to get to. And what that means is that we have to stay on top of what's going on in the industry, and it's changing a lot, and it changes
this conversation. So I think as teachers, we have to teach them about this.
Sure. And I can, you know, people have lost jobs, have been fired from jobs because of things that they have said on Facebook or on Twitter or on blogs. So, I mean, it happens. It's a very, very real thing. I'm from my personal experience. I had a young singer who was voicing some strong opinions on my Facebook page, and was coming across, whether she intended to or not, as ungrateful and kind of rude. And a couple of agents of my acquaintance that I just happened to be friends with came on and said, you know, we're reading this, we see this, we're forming opinions about you. So, I mean, you don't know where, if you put something out there, you don't know where it's going to go these days. So even if it's not what you consider your professional page, you have to be very careful about what goes out. Don't say anything on social media that you don't want to say, you wouldn't say to somebody in person.
Their face, yeah. I love this question from Lisa Popiel. Hi, Lisa. She says, is singing in Germany or other European countries still a popular choice for American singers wanting to work? Great question.
I think it's harder than it used to be, and my caveat is I am not the expert on singing in Europe. You should ask Arnold about that. But for years now, there's been this sort of conventional wisdom that, oh, you should go to Europe. Germany Germany loves American singers, and that may be true. I still hear from people that American singers are among the best trained in the world. But if you're not, if you're going to go and sing in Europe, the reason for doing that should be because you really want to go sing in Europe. You want to live in Europe and you want to sing there. It should not be, gee, I'm not making it in the US. I think I'll go try Europe, because it's going to be just as hard there as it is here, and you'll have to do everything in a foreign language. So I think that it needs to be something that you think you have specific reasons, positive reasons for wanting to go.
Mhm.
And then, sure, I mean, I know a lot of Americans that are singing in Europe and having careers over there and have long-term careers. But
Arnold
I don't
is
think it's one of those things that we can just toss off and say, oh, yeah, just go over to Europe, see how you do there.
Arnold is saying, since you mentioned him, he says Germany does not love American singers. They pretty much resent us. We are better trained than the Europeans, but the American linguistic skills are so poor, we are made fun of by the Europeans. It's a real problem. So thank you, Arnold, for answering that, contributing to
Arnold.
that. And while we're, and Lisa says, wow, how interesting. While we're on Europe, let me see, there was a question about, could Cindy talk about the difference of appropriate audition attire in North America and Europe?
Again, I'm not the expert on Europe. I haven't sung over there. So I, from what I understand from my friends who sing over there, it is a little less formal than it is here. But I mean, formal is not even the right word. Americans do tend to dress up and glamorize a little bit more than Europeans do. From what, and this is not from my personal experience as a singer doing this. It's from talking to friends of mine who sing over there. So, but I think that you don't need to worry about it too much. I think you just wear, I mean, obviously, you should not be wearing formal wear of any kind for auditions. And the only time you would wear a formal gown or tux or cocktail attire would be if it were a competition that had, an audience,
Mhm.
and you were doing some kind of gala performance in front of, the one of the levels of the competition was in front of an audience, and you were asked to dress up. Um, Otherwise, you just wear your Sunday go-to-meeting clothes, and that's good enough. Nice suit. And this is the other thing I've noticed. Some of these kids just don't have very much money, and they shouldn't be made to feel like they have to go out and spend a whole lot of money buying a fancy outfit. If they have their nicely ironed pair of Dockers and a ironed button-down shirt and a tie that they borrowed from somebody, then the guy's fine. Girls are always going to need a dress that they feel good in, or a nice pantsuit, or what have you, or skirt and blouse. But especially for the college kids that have so many demands on their budgets, I, I would say do the best you can with what you've got. The most important thing, yeah, you want to look presentable, but the most important thing is to go in there and just sing really well. That's what the panelists care about.
And we're getting, let me read, Arnold again says, I'll help Cindy out. The dress in Europe is much less formal, which you said. I actually see a lot of jeans and t-shirts at auditions. And then Maria Rousseau says, doesn't have to be glitzy or dressy, chic and well-fitting. And this one is also about Europe. Arnold again says, the really big thing in Europe is to get into really good physical shape. I was just told that I would be a great Don Jose, but I was too fat to sing the role of young lover. Difference in the U.S. and Europe. The Europeans tell you bad things to your face. The USA people tend to just say it when you leave the room. That's interesting. Thank you for that. I'm
I think Arnold should be your next guest because he knows so much, and not just about Europe. But yeah, thanks, Arnold, for helping us out. Referring to the question that kind of came in between about glitz, no, glitz is not the word I would use. I mean, you're not going for any level of formality. Uh, you want to wear a for women, and it's always harder for women. You want to wear something that you would wear to a wedding, a daytime wedding, or I probably shouldn't use the example of Sunday go to meeting clothes anymore because these days people wear jeans and t-shirts to church. But you know, just a nice dress or a nice jumpsuit or even a nice pantsuit is fine for women, and men can wear a suit or they can wear a jacket. They don't have to wear a tie. And most important thing is that you feel good, confident, you look put together, everything's clean, your hair's out of your face, and you feel like yourself, the best version of yourself.
Well, let's move us back into America, and Cynthia Vaughn is leading us down a rabbit hole, which I'd like to discuss too. And she asks, "What about thank you notes to companies you auditioned for? Is that outdated?" And to that end, as you and I discussed before we started tonight, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the cold call, where we used to pick up the phone and call the companies. Is it acceptable now if you're wanting to get started with regional companies, let's say? Emailing the art directors, and yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, just very briefly, I actually, one of my lectures in the workshops that I do is all about how to get auditions, where to look for them, how to approach people effectively. As far as cold calling goes, technology has changed things a bit, and I wouldn't advise anyone to pick up the phone and call unless they already had a connection at that company, in which case it wouldn't be a cold call. As far as just like picking up the phone and calling whoever you can get, people are not going to appreciate having their time used that way. You can approach them by letter or by email, and I would say that that would be a much better way to do it. One of the things actually that we should talk about is email etiquette. I'm
Yes.
sure all of you who teach at universities are well versed in how ridiculous some of that is.
Yeah.
I wish I had $1 for every time I got an email from a student that said, "Hey,"
Yeah.
and that was the extent of the salutation, or no salutation whatsoever. I think that teaching our young singers that email, even though it's an informal way to communicate with your friends and family, if you are writing a business letter of any kind, then email is absolutely as formal as if you were typing it on the computer and printing it out.
Mhm.
And it's very important that they approach people with the right salutation, and take the time to find it out, and take the time to find out who they're supposed to be writing to,
Mhm.
not just to whom it may concern. All that information is out there on the websites for people to find, and usually companies even tell you how they want to be approached. So you've got to do some research, and research is really, really important.
And do you thank you notes? Email is okay, or old school thank you card that's dropped in the snail mail?
Well,
Which
old school thank you card is always going to be appreciated, but I think email is fine too.
Okay, so but you're comfortable with both.
Mhm.
And talk about so Cynthia also this was on my list too. So talk about headshots. I hate the old black white serious diva shots with pearls and updos. So let's talk about some of the trends right now with headshots and
Yeah, the trend in headshots, well, first of all, nobody does black and white glossy anymore. That's been gone for some time now. And nobody prints out their headshots either. Yay, we don't have to worry about that anymore. Maybe they do for like grad school auditions and young artist programs and things like that. But most of the time, professionally these days, and I know my program, we don't want I don't want your printed out headshot. I want you to send me a high resolution file that I can just click and
look.
plop into my program. And that's what most companies are wanting. My agent doesn't even hand out headshots. Ours are printed on our resumes, on our press kits, but they're in color.
Mhm.
And yeah, a slightly less formal headshot is very, very fashionable now. When you're going to get photos made, yes, you want to get a headshot that you can use in the program and that you can send to people as part of your press kit, but you also want stuff that shows more three-quarters or full body and that you can use on your website and on social media for promotion. And I think that probably the number one thing that people, when they're getting their first headshots, need to realize is that it's not about getting a pretty picture. Yes, of course you want to look attractive, but that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is for you to look interesting, engaging, like you have something to say as an artist that's going to make me want to say, this is a person I'd like to get to know, and this is a person I might like to spend the next 3 weeks working with. So that is what you're going for in the headshot. And again, as I said before, don't overthink it.
Mhm.
If you have to overthink it, it's probably not going to be a good idea. It's not going to be honest for you. You want to look like yourself on a really good day.
Okay.
So I tell the women in particular to go ahead in spring to have their hair and makeup professionally done. It's worth it for a headshot. And guys, can probably use a little trim and maybe even want a little makeup just to pat down the shine and stuff like that. But you don't need to get too fancy with it. Do make sure that your facial hair and eyebrows and so forth are well groomed. But
And you kind
guys
of,
get off easy.
yeah, I do. You kind of answered this, but Randy does ask name on headshot directly or on the border, around the edge, or no name at all. But you're free.
Well, Randy has hit on one of my soapbox issues, and that is that your contact information needs to be on everything that you send to anybody that you're hoping to get a response on. So, again, printed headshots are a thing of the past, really, except for, like I said, maybe grad school and a few programs. So that issue is a little bit moot, but how you label your files that you send to people as attachments is important.
Mhm.
It needs to be your name. So Randy Tenner .jpg. That needs to be the name of your headshot so that they can find you easily when they're looking down the list of 500 headshots they have. Where's that guy's? And it shouldn't just say Randy's headshot or headshot or whatever. I used to see some crazy things, and that is true of any of the files that you send out for attachments. You need to have your name on it so people know how to find you.
And David Babinet asked, what would you recommend including in a promo pack to send to a potential employer?
Cover letter, resume, bio, review sheet if you have them, and some production photos. That's the basic press kit.
Maria Rousseau says hi, and then says, when auditioning for a YAP, what are directors looking for in the audition and resume? Do they actually want people who have been cast as a chorus member?
Well, as with anything, it depends on what you're auditioning for and whether you're auditioning for something that's appropriate for the level of experience that you have. So I don't think that having chorus on your resume is the kiss of death, but you have to have the level of experience that is required for someone to consider you for the job that you're applying for. So in other words, if all you've ever done is chorus, and there's nothing wrong with doing chorus, but if that is the extent of your experience and you haven't done any solo roles, no regional company is going to consider you. You need to get out there and get some kind of role somewhere. And if you're talking about a young artist program, rules for those are a little bit different. And as we mentioned before, Kari, when we were talking privately before this, I define a young artist program as an apprenticeship. It is a professional program that you're getting paid to do. not something that you pay to do. I consider programs that you pay to participate in to be training programs of some sort. Some people call them pay to sings. Again, nothing wrong with that. It's just making the distinction between the two. One is a professional credit and the other is an educational credit. So the rules for applying to a training program or a young artist program are a little bit different in that the people listening to singers there are not expecting a finished product. So there's more leeway in what your level of experience is, and in whether your resume is kind of crazy in terms of having stuff all over the place, because we expect young singers to have experimented, and we hope that they're singing a lot of repertoire and figuring stuff out. That's what they're supposed to be doing. So it's not necessarily to worry about that, but if you're going out for a professional gig, it's a little bit different story. At that point, we expect you to know what you're marketing yourself for, and for your resume to reflect that.
Right.
So, and that's actually something I do quite a lot of with singers, is helping them looking at their resumes and saying what's missing here, and how do I get from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm. A great follow-up question from David again with regards to recording. CD recording, DVD, or just links to website or YouTube?
Again, technology has moved along, and the nice thing now is I think that everybody should have a library of sound clips and video clips if you can get them. It's harder to get professional video clips. It's hard to get professional sound clips because of union rules with the orchestra. But we all have technology now that you can just walk right out there and make a pretty decent video and a pretty decent sound recording just with your cell phone. And so there's no excuse for not having current sound clips. Now, is this something that college students need to have? Maybe not. I mean, obviously, if they're applying for young artist programs and training programs, then yes, they're going to need to have some of those. But it's not something I think that they need to be tying themselves in knots over. I'm thinking more about emerging professionals and professional singers. You have to have those sound clips. Put them on your website. Have them available to send to people. The video clips are big now. My agent has us all make videos every year, and we all have YouTube channels and pop them up there, and they're on our websites as well. And people can and do get cast from those things. So it's good to have them. Whether or not you need to have them on CD, well, again, I guess if you're not so much. I mean, there was a time where we all had to go out and get our demo CDs copied and send them out. The good thing now is you can just do it as a sound clip and email it to somebody.
Right.
Or links up for them to get.
Mm-hmm. David asks, if you haven't done much professional singing for a while, is it possible to get back into it, and would there be any special tips?
There are, and there is a way, and that's one of the things that I work with people on and I teach a workshop on. Basically, you need to, well, like anything else, it depends on where you're starting from. How long has it been since you sang? And I have written a couple of articles about this, both for Classical Singer, and I believe there's some of them on my Mezzo with Character blog. So I have, and I know that I wrote an extensive one for Classical Singer a couple of years ago. So if you are a subscriber, you can look that up in the archives. And I actually took 3 different singers and used them as examples and just went through and detailed what each of them might be able to do. So I would encourage you to take a look at that article. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of it, but if you look up in the archives, it should be there.
Okay. So Arnold Rawls on that topic says, just remember there is unfortunately a shelf life for certain fachs. Interesting. And Cynthia, what's separate resumes for classical and musical theater? So if you're somebody, yeah, works in both.
Well, again, it kind of depends on what experience, what you're going for, what you're applying for, and what how much experience you have. With young singers who don't have many performance credits, I often just tell them to combine it. Many people do both now. But if you start to have a substantial amount in one direction or the other, then absolutely you can have separate resumes. You can also have a separate resume for concert oratorio stuff if you do a whole lot of that and less of, say, opera or whatever. I mean, I have separate resumes for my opera and my concert oratorio work, but it's not necessary. If you've got room on the resume, then you can put them all on the same resume.
Okay. So it kind of depends on how filled up your resume is. I guess probably the
I
question
would
would
say that's one of the factors, yeah. I mean,
come.
there's not a one size fits all answer about resumes because it depends on what your particular level of experience is, where you're looking to go with it, and uh, just it's a variety of factors, I would say.
Okay. I love this question from Jeremiah Johnson that came. He says hi to you.
Hi,
And
Jeremiah.
what are the top three business concepts you think teachers need more education on?
Oh, that's a great question, Jeremiah.
I know. It requires some.
Well, the top three business concepts. Well, we talked about one of them. Gosh, I don't know if I can quantify them in like the top three, but I do have some other points about entrepreneurship that I wanted to get through. And we talked earlier about encouraging individuality.
Right.
Um, I think it's really important um, to teach students the rules of the game, but also that the rules are meant to be bent and broken sometimes. I think it's essential that they learn how to do this politely and respectfully, but at the same time without letting people run roughshod over them. Um, I think it's really vital that we teach our singers that they are the only ones who get to define what a successful life or career looks like. I had a client just the other day who said to me, I sang in this master class with this wonderful teacher, and he was a master teacher. He was very encouraging, but one of the first things he did at the beginning of the class was tell all of us that we couldn't have a career if we had a personal life. And I said, let me guess, this guy was an older guy. This is very old school. And she said, yeah, and when I was done singing, and he gave me lots of great tips, and he was so positive and wonderful. But then he asked me if I was married, and when I said I was, he said, too bad. And I said, well, all I can tell you is that that is an extremely old-fashioned way of thinking, and I don't think that it's true at all. I've been singing for 25 years and married for 15, so it hasn't stopped my career. I know Arnold's married, and Arnold sings all over the place, and it's not true. And in fact, I think it's detrimental to think that you have to be married to the profession. So, I that's just one example of how I would encourage people to say, you know what, that's that even if it is true, that's not what's right for me, and I can still be a successful singer and pursue what speaks to me, what is authentic to me. So I do think that it's really important that they have that determination that they get to pick what success means for them in both their life and their career. So maybe it means that you sing for, I don't know, 10, 15 years as a regional singer, and then you get into the San Francisco Opera Chorus, like Buffy Baggett did. I mean, Buffy had a very successful solo career, and now she's singing in the San Francisco Opera Chorus, and she's taking some solo gigs when her schedule there allows. Is she not successful? Well, according to, when I was coming up, you had to sing at the Met or you weren't a success. I would call her successful. She's enjoying her life. Um,
Right.
there are people who are music directors at a church and teach voice lessons and sing 1 or 2 shows a year, are they not professional musicians? Are they not successful? They're the ones who get to say that. So I think that's a really important concept, and it's a healthier way of thinking about things. And just again to drive home the idea that we all have to be entrepreneurial and have multiple income streams. If you only have one income stream as an artist, you're really lucky and you're in the minority. I would say that it is essential for us to encourage our singers to take classes in finances, business, graphic design, advertising, marketing, not only to develop flexible day job skills, because we all go through these periods, even if you end up with all your income streams being related to the arts, everybody has those periods they go through where they have to temp or they have to get a real job or something like that. And even if that's not the case, all of those things help you in your own classical singing business. And that brings me to what I probably think is the number one thing, and Jeremiah, you can tell me if you agree with this. I think it's really, really important that we start encouraging singers while they're still in school, from the moment they get into school, to be thinking and acting as if they are preparing to launch a small business upon graduation, and to figure out how they're going to fund that business and how they're going to create their lives, build their lives, so that they are seeing themselves not only as artists who are out there creating art, but as business people who own a business, who are running a business, and to understand what that means and how to do it effectively. And full disclosure, Jeremiah has some financial workshops that he does that are great. He sometimes offers them through My Business of Singing, and he also, I hired him this year to do it at Spotlight on Opera, and his classes on how to figure out taxes and how to budget when you don't know what your income is going to be were the most popular guest classes that we had. So I think those things it's really important to get that information. Gosh, I wish I had had it when I was in school. Yeah, so I think those are the points that I wanted to make about what teachers can do to encourage that artistic entrepreneurship and help singers get on the track to start developing it.
Well, on behalf of academics, I definitely wish that we need a business of singing class as part of the curriculum. But as you know, music majors, we have more credits than I think any other major in school.
Right.
And there's just no room for me to even propose any curricula change. It's quite a process, and it would mean taking away something else. So do we take away a diction class or an art song class? What do we take away? Because we won't go down this rabbit hole, but most of us would like to add an acting class, acting for singers class, very neglected. So to that end, Cindy, grad school or not for singers?
Well, before we get to that question, let me just say that one of the reasons I started doing the workshops and the whole way that the Business of Singing came about was to address that issue. Right. Because there are a few schools that do offer some kind of business education, but it's very rarely specific to singers. Mm-hmm. And so this workshop that I developed in the consultations were specifically to fill that need. Because yes, as you say, it is very hard to get it in the curriculum. And I think there's also a legitimate question about, well, how much responsibility does the school have for preparing the business side of the career for you? There's so much to do to prepare your artistic side. On the other hand, we're spitting out these great artists who don't have a clue what to do. Mm-hmm. So, and we don't have much support for them because our job interview process is so different than other professions. So I think that in terms of the health of the industry, that teaching this stuff is really important. Mm-hmm. So to go on to grad school or not, again, a very individual choice. It depends on what you want to do with your life. Obviously, if you ever think you might, in any situation, want to teach at in higher education, you've got to have not just a master's, but these days a PhD. Um, or you have to have a lifetime of experience at a very, very high level, and even then some of those people cannot get jobs um, in higher education because of all the accreditation and all the rules, all the hoops that universities have to jump through. um, for a student trying to decide whether to go to grad school or not, I think that it depends on a multitude of factors, including, I mean, I think it's a terrible idea for anybody to go into major debt for a music degree. Unfortunately, that's the only way some people can do it, but you're never going to pay it off. I'm sure there are many people watching who are still paying off their student loans. Raise your hands. And I think that you might be better off in some cases if performing is what you want to do, getting some kind of job that allows you some flexibility and getting that, continuing your vocal training, your a la carte, going to programs to get your experience, your role experience, teaching, taking private lessons and coachings, continuing to study languages, and all those other things that we need to have. On the other hand, the great thing about grad school is it's kind of one-stop shopping. If you get to a good one, then you kind of have everything right there, and you can get that, a lot of the experience and the training that you need. One of the problems I see, however, is that a lot of singers come out of grad school and are not employable. Their vocal technique is not usable in a solo situation. And what to do to address that, I'm not quite sure. I'm sure people smarter than I have ideas about how that may be. But I think part of it is just the way the institutes are structured, and part of it is, I mean, you can't force people to learn or to do what they're supposed to do. We all have the students that, we spend a lot of time and energy on, and no matter what we do, they just don't seem to advance. So there's a lot of, again, there's not just one area to place blame on. There's a lot of factors going into it. But I do think that grad school can be a really, really good thing for a singer. And you got to get the education somewhere. So you got to figure out what is best for you, and that's the mantra of your path. What is the best for me right now at this place in my life and with where I want to go?
Well, as we come down to the close of this, I want to just spend a couple minutes, if you don't mind. I'd like your thoughts on agents. How is that different now than it was 20 years ago? When do students go and try and get an agent? If they're mostly just working regionally, should they just continue in that vein?
Well, yeah, my opinion on agents is that, I mean, from the standpoint of getting ahead in the business, you're going to get ahead a lot faster if you have a decent to good agent. And of course, that's just not the easiest thing in the world to get. And as far as when you should approach an agent is when you have something that needs management. You don't just graduate from school with your freshly minted diploma and start going down the list in Musical America and phoning all the agents that you find there. You need to get out and start doing some stuff. You need to try, do some competitions, do some young artist programs, audition for small regional opera houses and get some roles on your resume and start building something. As far as credits go, as far as your artistry goes, and as far as your networking goes, it's going to get people interested in you. Every time you go and sing somewhere, you're establishing relationships with people, and hopefully it's going to be relationships that you can then come back to and build on. And that's honestly where you start to meet the agents, is when you're out singing. And people who are further up the ladder than you are have agents, and maybe their agents are coming to see them. So they see you too. and then you have an opportunity to basically, you've just had a little audition for them. So yeah, I think that you have to get something going before you're going to get any legitimate agent to be interested in you. And the other thing I will say about agents is that, like any other opportunity in this business, you have to do your research. You have to know who this person is and what their background is. To know, I mean, it's a very personal decision, just like a voice teacher, and you've got to have an agent who has the connections you need and who really believes in you.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to do your homework, and that is something that anybody can start doing in college. Just sit down and Google people and find out who their singers are and find out where they're placing people and what their background is and what their singers say about them. All of that stuff. There's no escaping. Research is probably the biggest thing besides learning music that we have to do to stay on top of things in this business.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. And this final question from Cynthia brings us full circle tonight. She talks about how, as teachers, can we help our students to be self-directed in finding resources? And you mentioned, of course, some wonderful resources on your website, but in general, I mean, I kind of feel like they need to be self-directed. To be in this business, you better already be self-directed. But, is there any advice you have for us as teachers?
Well, again, I mostly work with adult students at this point, but I did teach undergraduates for a while. And that's the $10,000 question right there. How do you get undergraduates to be more self-directed? I agree with the thought that if they don't have it, they're not going to get very far, and there's really nothing that you can do to force them to. Nor should they. If they're not, you have to have a certain, not just the talent, but you have to have a certain personality to be a performer. And if that drive isn't there, you may be able to be propped up for a while, but it's not going to last very long. So, I took what some people would say was a rather callous approach as a teacher of undergraduates, and I said, look, I ain't your mama. It's not my responsibility to make sure you're successful. Here are the tools. You go out and do it yourself. And if you need help, I'm here. Come talk to me. I'll be glad to help you. But here's where you start. So I think what you do is you give them resources. You point them towards resources and try to teach them the questions that they should be asking. At least the questions they need to start off with, because there's going to be so many questions. But if you can sort of just guide them in the direction that they need to go in, I think that's one of the most useful things you can do for them.
That's wonderful. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for all this incredible advice. We're getting lots of thank yous coming in directed at you, and I really appreciate your time. And please remember these resources that Cindy mentioned, and you can go to her websites and the book and the columns, and also if you have a university that needs to have a business of singing seminar,
or a NATS chapter.
Or a NATS chapter, absolutely. So thank you. And let me remind NATS chatters, December 11th is our next NATS chat with Dr. Michael Johns and Peggy Baruti, and we will be discussing the aging voice. And that is co-sponsored by the Voice Foundation. So thank you, Maria Rousseau and the Voice Foundation. And of course, our chats are sponsored by Inside View Press. So thank you, Scott McCoy. And thank you for all the thank yous coming in, everyone. And I hope to see you all in December. So good night.
Good night. Thanks, Kari.
Thank you. Is it still going? Looks like it's still going.
Yeah. So hopefully it didn't stop at some point.
Okay. Alan, did you record it too this time? Oh, we can't hear you.
Oh, whatever you're opening would be great.
Alan and I It's my now. Hello.
I recorded most of it. I started a few minutes late, but I'm sure between the two of us, we probably have it all.
Oh, good. That'll be great. And in fact, so usually we post it on the NATS chat archive, Cindy.
Mhm.
Paul, I still haven't seen the one. You sent it to me, and I know people have watched it because they've told me. But when I go on the NATS chat archive, I don't see the one with Dr. Green from last month. Is
Hmm.
is it just here?
I, I'll I'll take a look at that, but maybe if you, I don't know, refresh your screen or something.
Yeah, well, it may be something as silly as that with me.
Oh, beautiful glasses.
So is that where it can be found, Cindy? Yeah, the only thing I see is 2015, 2016. Even when I refresh
Yeah,
my,
if you go to the chat schedule
yeah.
and the first one's Don Green, you don't see a green click here to watch the October
Yes,
chat.
I do. I was looking, thank you. I was looking for it though under archives, which is where
Well, usually.
It should be on the current schedule, and you just scroll down the page.
it is. It is. At some point, will we then load them all into the archive? Because that's where people.
Yeah, we just haven't done that.
I won't be picky. So, Cindy, under the nats.org, Nats chat schedule, whenever
That's where it is.
it'll
Okay,
say
great.
to watch it. Thank
Great.
you.
We'll try to send you a link to it.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Thanks. I'll publicize it. And hopefully get some more watchers. I have an audition tomorrow, and I'm sitting here in Neil's house, and it's getting late, and I'm sure he would like
No.
to go to bed. But was there anything else that you guys
Just wanted to thank you offline. I just wanted to thank you. So, thank you so much for
Thank you
tonight.
very much. It's my pleasure. I was really happy to do it.
Really appreciate it. All right.
All right. Nice to meet you all, and take care.
You
Okay,
too.
bye.
Bye.
Okay. Good. All right. We're all good then. We think we got it between the two of you.
Probably.
It looks like it looks like it's still recording on my
Yeah, mine too.